You know, there's a moment every politician dreads, not when the cameras are turned on, but when they realize the story is moving on without them. That moment, that moment is where Tim Walz is right now. Now, I want y'all to stay with me because if you leave early, you're gonna miss the turn.
So I mean, I'm just walking around kind of just dayside because I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing to do. It feels kind of wrong being here in some way. I don't know why.
And why do you think? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Like where that stems from. Like I don't. I mean, part of it is being like a white woman that I'm privileged and I have a lot of privilege. So I feel like white tears are not always something that's helpful or necessary when black and brown people have been experiencing this for a long time. This isn't new for them, and so I don't know if that makes any sense in that way.
How did you decide that you should be here? Or are you still figuring that out?
Well, I work like 2 miles from here, so driving by, I don't, it was like I'm here. I'm 2 miles. I can stop.
Wow. This woman says it feels wrong to mourn because the victim was a privileged white woman. This is where we are in 2026, y'all. Listen to what just happened. A woman is dead. There's a memorial, and somehow mourning becomes a moral dilemma. Not because of facts, not because of evidence, but because of identity math. That's the first manipulation. Grief is no longer human, it's conditional, it seems. And once grief has conditions, everything else definitely becomes negotiable. That might sound abstract until you see what it looks like on the ground.
I'm a Minneapolis native, and I just left the protest site from where the ICE shooting incident occurred yesterday. I want to give you my two thoughts because I feel like nobody in mainstream media is covering this correctly. The left and right see this incident very differently. The right believes that she was trying to ram the officer and injure him. The left believes that she was just innocently trying to get away. There's no way to know for sure what she was trying to do here. What we do know is that within, a little over 24 hours, there's a very well-coordinated effort to get a protest going here in Minneapolis. That began within hours of the incident. Now, Tim Walz and Jacob Fry are kind of egging it on, in my opinion, saying, ICE, get the F out of here. Walz is calling this a civil war, calling the ICE officer a rogue officer, and saying that National Guard are going to come in and almost get ICE out of here, which does sound like a civil war. But to me, when I visited the protest site, this is what was very apparent to me. Protesters are blockading the streets so that normal drivers cannot drive down that road. They've blocked a couple blocks off. This is not police putting in barricades. This is not any type of law enforcement doing that, National Guard. This is protesters. Where I was standing with media, and the protesters were screaming at all of us in media, telling us that we are the problem, and telling us what angles people were allowed to film at, and telling us not to film at all. And what's even more absurd about that is that media was paying attention, but it was kind of scary. It's scary to be yelled at like that. There were also people wearing fluorescent vests directing traffic. Again, these are not protesters. Maybe some of them are protesters. These are just random passersby, and they are being barked orders at by people who look like they're official. They're wearing kind of official vests, telling them where to go. Once they cleared enough cars, they brought in this big van, and this van had supplies in it that they were unloading. And these protesters are not letting anybody not affiliated with the movement go closer towards the scene. In my opinion, I think it'll get pretty violent either tonight or tomorrow or both. If you look back at the 2020 George Floyd riots, it was the second and third nights that progressively got worse and spread throughout the city. If I had to guess, that it's going to happen now too, although tomorrow will be colder, so maybe not. And one more thing, a lot of the protesters are dressed in camo and they have bulletproof vests on. So it seems like they're gearing up for a real fight. Bothering me about this though, and what nobody is covering, is that the police let protesters get away with this type of behavior in Minnesota. And that is ultimately, in my opinion, what cost this woman her life. 10 years ago, I remember talking to police officers who told me that they've basically been given a stand down order, that they just let the protesters do whatever they want to do when something like this happens. So that woman, when she drove away yesterday, probably thought the police would let her get away with it. ICE doesn't follow those same orders. ICE doesn't give the stand down orders. The reason I feel like this is so tragic is because this is entirely preventable. If Minneapolis police did not let left-wing activists get away with whatever they want to do, block off city blocks, shut down highways for the last 10 years, I'm sure yesterday's outcome would have been different. It's really sad for my city that it's like this.
Now, notice what she's not saying. First of all, she's not screaming. She's not speculating. She's quite literally describing the logistics, who was, how do I say, directing traffic, who's controlling the filming, who decides what people can stand. That's not grief at all. That's infrastructure. And when chaos has organizers, someone higher up starts to panic. That's the point of this. It's just this. Oh, wow. My camera. Hold on. Camera over here acting like a leftist. But like I was saying, this is usually where leadership steps in. So let's see what leadership looked like.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz here. You witnessed in Minnesota yesterday a tragedy, the death of Renee Good on the streets at the hands of a federal agent. You also witnessed last night a beautiful visual, a peaceful visual, people expressing their constitutional and First Amendment rights in a peaceful manner. And for that, I say thank you. I've been very clear. We need a couple things here. We need Minnesota to carry out this investigation to make sure that the professionals at the BCA and the local law enforcement who's in charge of law enforcement make sure we do the investigation, and then to pull back this unnecessary surge. And so with that, I would ask for all of us to continue to do this peacefully, continue to raise our voices, but do so in a manner that brings about that sense of community. In Minnesota, I'm declaring tomorrow at 10 a.m. on January 9th, I'd ask everyone to pause for a moment of silence, to remember Renee Good, also to remember all that's good and right about this nation. And I'm going to ask folks if they can. I'd ask employers to give their people some space. I'd ask each and every one to find a way to contribute in your community. It might be shoveling your neighbor's walk. It might be being at a food bank. It might be pausing to talk to someone you haven't talked to before, but to show the goodness, to rise up, to make sure that we're being very, very clear about this, that we expect our constitutional rights to be respected, that law enforcement is local, that we expect accountability of our elected leaders, and that we are not going to go quietly, and we're not going to give up on those things that matter so much to us. And chief amongst those is human dignity, respect, rule of law, all of the things that we know make this country great.
Now, if it was anybody else, most of the stuff he was saying you can get behind, but watching that closely, that wasn't confidence, right? That was containment language. Let me explain what I mean. Unity, calm, peaceful. Those words only show up when someone feels things are slipping. I'm just saying. Okay. Here's the part that they don't say. You don't call for unity when you're in control. Most of the time. I'm just saying. For the most part, I'm just saying. We got good people out here, but you usually call for unity when you're afraid of what happens next. And while Walz is asking for, the calm, others are doing something very different.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Krasner, who say he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here.
Philadelphia sheriff threatens to arrest ICE agents. This matters more than people realize. A local official openly threatening federal agents, that isn't activism. It's a stress fracture in authority. And when that starts happening across cities, governors don't worry about headlines. They worry about precedent. Now, here's where things get uncomfortable because the effects, they start breaking through.
This vehicle was blocking the federal agents right there.
That's right, Tom. And a big caveat, we don't know what happened before this, but they're definitely going to look at the fact this is an unmarked vehicle, but the lights are on. These are clearly members of law enforcement. So that's at least known to this driver.
Let's play the video because something else happens right here. Those officers approach the vehicle. They try to open the door. Let's stop it here. How will this help the investigators?
Whatever is said here, what these officers say, if the driver said anything or not, could really help them understand whether or not they thought there was some sort of an imminent threat. Was this person trying to listen to them? Were they scared? Or is this going to be a problem?
And then, of course, what the driver does next. Let's play that video. Trying to leave there. One of the officers felt like they were forced to fire, and they do. We want to show another angle, reverse angle of the same incident here. We're going to freeze it. This is that same angle here. And what does this show us, Tom?
Well, this appears to show an officer right in front of the vehicle. That in between the way that the vehicle was moving and the timeline of that, how was the officer responding in that split second going to be critical for investigators.
Finally, one more piece of evidence we want to talk about here, and it is the bullet hole in the front of the windshield. What will this tell investigators?
Well, you look at this, you look at ballistics, you look at witness statements, you look at other video, all going to be part of this investigation.
Okay. Y'all notice something that just happened? NBC unexpectedly breaks down the footage. This is the moment the narrative hits resistance, not from, conservatives, not from just social media, but from video. When footage slows down, look, them slogans, they start working. And once people, start comparing angles instead of tweets, panic sets in quietly, not publicly. That's why you saw this next moment happen pretty fast.
I think we may be in that moment now. Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe in fact has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
I think we may be in that moment now. Can you comment on his rhetoric?
This is where Walz's problem becomes permanent. Because now it's not activists talking, it's power. It's power. Yapping right there. And when someone at that level calls you out, you don't spin. You got to brace. But JD Vance didn't stop there.
And the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature. It seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who is defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last year drop by 20%. Why is that drop by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop it. Have your debates about policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. they are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happen. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law? You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing, not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life.
I spoke about this clip on my main channel, Kingdom Reacts, just earlier today, where Vance called out the left-wing media misrepresentation and how the radicalized rhetoric usually results to this. And here's where the manipulation is getting exposed, right? If the media frames self-defense as murder and dissent as extremism, the panic spreads downstream from there. And that's not opinion. That's literally cause and effect. And Walz knows it. He does. Which explains why this next move wasn't symbolic.
Well, this is breaking news, and we are still digesting it here as we watch the protesters on one side of Minneapolis and federal law enforcement on the right side of your screen. The protest has been large and then small, and then lots of people have left, and it kind of comes in and out of view. We're covering that, and at the same time, the sanctuary laws may be in play here because the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has just withdrawn its participation in investigating the fatal shooting involving ICE officer in Minnesota. The BCA, this is from a statement from them, is alleging, reporting on that now, was informed that federal authorities had removed the agency's access to evidence, interviews, and case materials. Now, remember, those sanctuary laws prevent anybody in the state's law enforcement or the municipalities from providing evidence or cooperating or even letting ICE do their job. So we know that that was pre-existing. That may play a role here. If they're not going to play ball, why would you hand them all the evidence of your investigation? We'll follow this. BCA says that they are considering coming back to the investigation. I don't know what would be predicated for that to happen, but we wanted to report that to you. We'll move now.
This is the moment the room goes quiet. Let me tell you why. Because federal takedown means no local control, no friendly framing, no escape hatch. This is the moment someone realizes, look, I don't get to manage this anymore, right? That's fear. Not loud, but it's real. And once fear hits street level, things turn down. What is up with my camera?
In what world do you think doxing ICE agents would be even a remotely good idea? Do you realize what you're doing? I mean, let's just think this through logically here. Here you go. Some 5-foot-tall internet troll is going to dox people like ICE agents, people like me. I mean, how's that going to play out? You see, you think you're tough because you're with some mob on the street against some agents throwing snowballs at them or whatever else. But you've doxed people. Now you're advocating for people to come to my home with my family and my kids there. Let me tell you, as someone who's dealt very violently with a home invasion personally, I fought harder in that brief encounter than I ever did in Iraq. For these agents or anyone who might have to deal with people coming into their homes, there's no rules. This won't be tear gas being fired at them. These are going to be real bullets coming fast. Because when you're defending your family, you don't care about rules. You don't care about laws and what might happen if. You only caring about killing what's coming through your door. Anyone who's ever seen combat knows this and can relate. When you are trained for this too, it has a unique way of kicking in these circumstances. And you're in your own home. You're on your own turf with your children's lives at stake. So I am pleading with these people not to go to these agents' homes for their own safety, for liberals' sake, not for the agents' sake,
Because if it was me, again, speaking from experience here, you think the mob's going to protect you? Ask the 4 kids who got free trips to the ER who broke into my house. A trained agent or officer or military guy, we're going to drop like 15 of you people before you even figure out what's going on. And I bet you're going to rethink showing up at an officer's house after you have a hole in your chest. You think these people, and honestly, people like me who are also a target, you think we're aggressive now? You think we're the... Wait till you threaten our families. You have no idea how hard we'll fight. There's no mercy or standard or remote version of humanity you will experience if you show up at my house and threaten my children. I'm not saying this to, start a fight. I'm pleading with you, libs. Stop it. Because that's the line. You keep up this rhetoric, there's going to be carnage, and not on our side.
He loves the Constitution.
No, this isn't tough talk. It's quite literally a warning. When politics leaves policy and enters personal homes, the rules change instantly. Every governor knows that. Excuse me. But like I said, every governor knows that, especially the ones calling for calm. So let's end where reality ends.
Let's do this. Let's send out the message loud and clear. And it should start with the mayor, the police chief, the local sheriff, and the governor of Minnesota. Cooperate with law enforcement officers. Don't resist them. Don't violently resist them. If you do violently resist them, if you do felonious assaults with 2-ton weapons, expect to be shot. Hello everyone, Chef Grady Judd here. I've been asked by media outlets and several people to comment on the event that occurred in Minneapolis yesterday. Let me make one thing abundantly clear. You have to be accountable for your conduct. And that starts with the mayor. Did you hear his filthy talk? Did you hear his filthy, uninformed talk yesterday to the people not only of the city and the state, but across the nation? Shame on you. That's lack of professionalism. Now let's look at the event. The investigation's not complete. I am giving you context on the video clip that I saw. Law enforcement officers, federal law enforcement officers, ICE agents, were trying to take the occupant of the car out of the vehicle. During this encounter, the vehicle backed up and then drove directly at the ICE agent. That is a deadly weapon, a 2-ton deadly weapon. So what did the occupant expect? They should have expected to be shot when you commit a deadly assault on a law enforcement officer. So let's do this. Let's send out the message loud and clear. And it should start with the mayor, the police chief, the local sheriff, and the governor of Minnesota. Cooperate with law enforcement officers. Don't resist them. Don't violently resist them. If you do violently resist them, if you do felonious assaults with 2-ton weapons, expect to be shot.
No ideology here, no poetry, just physics and the law. And that's why this scares people like Tim Walz. Because once reality re-enters the conversation and narrative, it cannot save you at all. Tim Walz, he isn't afraid of protests. He's afraid of time right now. Time exposes the contradictions. Time favors the facts, and time removes control from people who thought words wasn't. It's not. This isn't left or right. I tell y'all that all the time. Today it's about what happens when leaders realize they can't rewind the story and only react to it. Most, the most dangerous moment in politics is when the mask slips quietly and everyone pretends not to notice. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, I want you to write, the turn already happened. Yep. Not for the algorithm, but for me. Y'all be safe. Go check on somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.